I'm indeed in a sabbatical, and so people ask me, what do you do? And my challenge is to stay on the plan of not having a plan. So I do some painting, some drawing, I read a lot, I read philosophy, I do a lot of writing, but I don't, but the bottom line, my wife is getting very nervous, you don't do anything. A bit part of the purpose of the sabbatical. This painting is from Peter Bruegel the Elder. It's called The Blind Lead the Blind. So I would like that with this group of people, because we are preaching to the people already are convinced, but that you help us finding sense makers that can help guide the blind. There's another reason why I took this picture. It's because of the chapel at the end, at the horizon, which says something about myself. I discovered that this chapel on the painting of Bruegel, which is from the Middle Ages, this chapel exists, and it happens to be west of Brussels, in a place called Iterbeek, and it happens to be the place where I was living the first 25 years of my life. I was literally living at 100 meters from this chapel. So a lot of what I'm trying to bring into this presentation is sort of rebooting myself, looking back to my origins, my real deep drivers. And a couple of months ago, I was visiting this wonderful exposition in Barcelona by George Méliès. Who knows who is George Méliès? 1, 2, 3, several. Oh, wow. So George was a pioneer in cinema, and especially in cinematographic effects. So he was the guy who invented cinema effects. And so we have this headset on, and the guide is walking us through the exposition. And she said, and George's motto in life was he wanted to inspire other people to dream. I have been lucky in this, that my company, Swift, has, in 2007, paid for me a personal discovery journey, which was called Leading by Being, which was about who am I in a group, what is my role in the world. So it's a quest for purpose, quite intensive program. And so where I landed was also on this quest, on this purpose for myself, inspire other people to dream. So I use it as a compass, whether I'm at work, at home, anywhere else. Am I doing, at this moment, am I still inspiring other people to dream? And if not, stop doing it. So I'm going to do something a bit scary. I'm going to ask the room to observe 30 seconds. Yeah. Would be too easy. 30 seconds of silence, and during that silence, you think, you close your eyes and you try to imagine your dream of the 21st century enterprise after everything that you have heard this week. I'm doing this because we are so in the present shock as described by Douglas Rushkoff, and we are always tick, 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 tweet, 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 and we don't take the time anymore to at least have 30 seconds of reflection. So a little bit before I start the real story, something you have to know, I have been trained as an architect. So not the engineering architect, the artistic architect that is doing things that sometimes cannot be built. So I talk a lot in architectural metaphors. And here is an architectural metaphor. It's a book from an architect, Christopher Alexander. The title of the book, you can read it, The Timeless Way of Building. And what he is describing, tries to describe, is what is the quality of a really great building. And there is no word for that. But he gives attributes like the building has to be whole, The building has to be right. It has to feel right. The building has to be designed for the people who live in there. The building has to have some eternal aspect. The building does not have the stamp, the ego stamp of the architect anymore. So when I was reading the book, I'm always trying to make comparison. This is sort of qualities that I'm looking for in people in organizations and also beyond organizations. So people who have this wholeness and daring to step forward and doing things because they feel right. He just wrote another book, and I didn't find a better image of this, but it's very appropriate for this event. The book is called The Battle for the Life and Beauty of the Earth, and the subtitle is The Struggle Between Two World Systems. And he is describing level System A and System B, where System B is everything that we hate. It's the industrialized, only looking at the profit, efficiency, ta-da-ta-da-ta-da-ta-da. And level A system is a system where we try to create buildings, environments where people come alive. It's a beautiful book. It's about a campus he has been designing in Japan with the users, with the teachers, with the students. And he hasn't drawn any piece on the paper before they have had long interviews and go on the piece of land where the building is going to be built, and are prototyping with flags what the space would look like and what would feel right. He calls it Quan, the quality without a name. I start imagining a currency, the currency Quan, the quality without a name. Okay, you got that one? So the problem that we are trying to address is that our organizations no longer serve our needs. And you can read the rest. It's about high velocity, hyperconnectivity, about speed of change, and change is required. So in normal human language, what I would say is we are fed up with the system and we are going to step forward and going to do something about it. That's what Corporate Rebels is about. This is the belt that Laura Merling was wearing a couple of years ago at the conference when she was doing a talk. It's a rock and roll belt. And she looks a bit skinny and has black, like rave hair. And she gives a talk about how she was hired at Alcatel-Lucent to build a business-to-business platform for mobile something, doesn't matter. And the CEO told her, Laura, this is your job, and you have 90 days, 90 days to deliver, and you have no budget and no resources. Off you go. And Laura was courageous enough to step up to the challenge, and she went out for what she called, she hired mercenaries. She probably meant missionaries, because mercenaries do it for the money, and missionaries do it because they have a belief for it. So she hired her best friend marketeer and her best friend developer, and she had a team of 6, and they built the goddamn thing in 90 days, and they got paid in the end. And so she's going back to the CEO office, and the CEO says to her, that's great, Laura, from now on, you are our corporate change agent. And we have discussed a lot about KPIs, but this is the KPI that Laura got as a change agent. Laura, you are successful when 70,000 people of this organization knock on my door and ask, what is this bloody woman doing in my company? It can be as simple as that. So this is Laura and myself wearing a pirate hat and the moustache. Maybe the moustache becomes our logo, I don't know. And this is another guy which was part of that initial team, Mike Manny, who is a digital strategist who is doing communication and that sort of things. And so we sat together and we had a meeting in London and we said, let's shoot out a tweet or a mail to 10 friends, Laura 10 friends, me 10 friends, and ask them to convene together online and later on have a meeting. And so we created a site, a very simple site. It's a one-page HTML site, CorporateRebelsUnited.com. And at the bottom of the site, of that page, there is a button, Join. And so we have published on that site our manifesto, our beliefs, our principles, and anybody who feels called by those principles can join. There is no selection criteria. Anybody who feels appealed by this can join. And some people in the group are starting to make this sort of nice artistic impressions of what Corporate Rebels is about. It's about play fair, open your heart, recognize value, act from your true self. I think it's probably the most important one of my whole presentation. So when I go back to the beginning of the presentation, leading by being, so if you really find the deep self that is driving you, it's to follow that energy from your deep self and do what you feel is right. And not being scared of the scars and the bruises and the arrows in your back. But rebels is a bit a sharp word. So we have hesitated a long time in the group whether we would keep the word rebel, because we could have called it the change makers or something else, but we wanted to keep that sharpness in it. And Nilofer Merchant really nailed it down what it is really about. We are protagonists, but you know, Protagonists United doesn't bite so well. So it are people, a protagonist is a principal champion of a cause or program or action, and the protagonist does not wait for permission to lead, to innovate, and to strategize. So it's from the energy, take personal leadership, step forward, and do the thing that you feel is right. And the starting point, this is not an anarchist movement. The starting point is we are people who love our organization, and we want that organization to succeed. And a lot of, I see a lot of things that are happening on the ecosystem of our organization, and when I see what's happening there and the speed of change and the impact and the scale of change that is happening there, I'm becoming very worried for the organization I'm working for, and I really want to do everything that is needed to change for the better. And so our ultimate goal is to find collectively the drivers and value of a 21st modern organization, and not only to find them, because we want to be very actionable, it's also to live and breathe those principles and those drivers every day when we are at work. And so this is the manifesto, and I'm going to read it. So it is about relentlessly challenging the status quo, relentlessly breaking the rules and saying the unsaid, spreading the innovation virus like tribal energy, with no fear, with a cause to do good, leading by being from your true selves and going after the unnamed quality relentlessly. Relentlessly. I've been now 7 years in an innovation department in a quite conservative industry, banking, financial services. So I have my scars and my arrows, etc., in my back. And so relentlessly doing that for 7 years asks a lot of mental and physical energy. So that's probably also one of the reasons why I'm now taking a little step back to reboot the machine, so that I can come out not in the sense of keeping the brand alive or keeping the man alive, because that sounds like an emergency where you keep the patient alive. But I want to apply to myself some sort of open heart surgery, so that when I come out, I can run again another marathon of 7 years. And I don't know whether I will do something with this. Suddenly it came up with, what about Code 21? Because with Corporate Rebels United, what we want to create is 21 principles, they're documented on our site, which lead to 21 practices for the 21st century organization. So where we really want to land is a set of practices, plural, for value creation. It's practices in the sense, like you know, practices for efficiency, like Six Sigma and Lean. But we want to create the balance for value creation practices, not efficiency practices that take all the juice out of an organization. I've gone through it. Six Sigma and Lean are the worst things that can happen to your organization. And you can quote me on that. By the way, I should have put a disclaimer at the beginning of my presentation. Disclaimer says, I'm 100% responsible for every word I say. Personally responsible. So what could be those 21st century? What could be the buckets? And I really love the sort of things that Jane has shown yesterday in her study. And I've seen other sort of categorizations of areas where we need to reinvent the organization. It could be organizational structure. We have heard John Husband. We have heard holacracy. We have, I mean, all those things are there. It's not a typo. It's leadingship that I put there. So leadership is about hierarchies and a person here who has followers. Leadingship is about persons who have followers. It's about stewardship. There is something very vicious about the word leadership in the hierarchical sense. It's not it's unfairness that somebody has the power to empower you. So somebody is sitting on a resource and they can decide when they want to empower you. There is an unfairness in that relationship. So what we want to do with corporate rebels, it's our people who are deciding to empower themselves. I don't need anybody above me to say, I'm empowered and I'm stepping forward. So there is a lot to say about leadership. There is a lot to say about how you create strategic options and a portfolio. I mean, in innovation, I've seen a lot of slides about innovation and open innovation, and on the one hand side, you have the front end of innovation, and there are thousands of ideas coming in the funnel, and the funnel narrows down, and you select, and you do incubations and prototypes, and by real magic, somewhere at the end of the funnel, there is a project coming into, or product coming into the market. This is bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. Yeah? Because you think that you can do this in, this is a linear way. This doesn't work that way. Decision making. It's how do you make decisions differently? So the key criterion for decision making in innovation is many times it's ROI and net present value. There must be other things. There must be things like possibility or probability or things that appeal more to the senses. I mean, we have evolved as human beings. Many years ago, we only had black and white television, but now we have color television and 3D and 4 whatever thing. So our sense for senses has evolved dramatically over the years, not only in color, but also in music, in harmony, and that sort of thing. So why cannot drive that part of our decisions? Also, the funnel slide, I mean, if you look at those slides, 90% is ideation, and then by magic, 10% is execution. I claim it's just the opposite. The hard part is execution. Yeah? So how can we, in a corporate organization, do the type of lean startup execution with high velocity feedback loops with customers and all the players in the ecosystem? How do we start thinking about system innovation like the previous speaker just talked about? I mean, I invite you to look at things like Nike's initiative, which is called launch.org. They're doing system innovation at scale. They have partnered with MIT, with NASA, with governmental institutions, and they look at all the players, the regulators, the governmental institutions, because they can say, in our company, we have decided that we want to reduce waste when we produce shoes, but if somebody else in the ecosystem is doing an action that is completely neutralizing the effect of what they're doing, I mean, we haven't advanced a little bit. And the last one is about self-expression, and it has to do with my sabbatical, because I'm going back to my origins of painting and of drawing. I think we have come at a moment that we have to express the narrative of what we do of our organizations in using other formats which are more appealing to the, not to the mind, and I have heard somebody say it's a mindset. Somebody said mindsets. I think it's about soul sets. So what can appeal to my audience, subconscious and unconscious, and I can use art for that, whether the art is music or sound and light landscapes or things like that. So I have a dream of one day building an event where we mix all those things and we have artistic performances at the level of quality of Cirque du Soleil that are really putting you in a, you're pumped up completely in a positive inspiration by subconscious and conscious type of formats. So what have we done in 2013? We are now 700 people worldwide, going from San Francisco to New Zealand and anything in between. It's really cross-industry. And we have people who have stepped forward in the community and say, hey, I'm the contact for San Francisco. And there are some others, Portland, Boston, Nashville, Amsterdam, Brussels, Bangalore, Melbourne, Sydney, Bangkok. So 700 people. And we are starting to team up with other organizations that do similar things. So there is another organization called Rebels at Work in Providence, Rhode Island. There is an organization in Norway called Corporate Rebels. Change agents worldwide is also very close to our ambitions, but I think that what we are trying to do is to feed the flame, the fire under the pot, so that we create awareness at all the levels in the organization in a viral way, deep in the fabric of the organization, that people are woken up and they say, let's hire a change agent to solve the problem. We are not doing much. We want to be very actionable, but we are not doing it very much. And a couple of my silent advisors have told me, Peter, be patient, because your group is in a forming and norming phase. Don't try to steer it too much, but the group expects from you that you give direction. So a short plug for change agents worldwide. I'm also part of that movement. I'm one of the charter members. And then we did in 2013 something called the Rebel Jam. So I did it together with Louise Kelly from Rhode Island, who is running Rebels at Work. And we said, let's do an event with Rebels. Yeah, cool. Do you have money? No, I don't have money. So we didn't want to take the personal risk to create an event where nobody would show up. So we said, let's do an online event. Let's do a 24-hour Rebel Jam. Yeah, let's do that. And so luckily that I had, through my network, a good connection with somebody who has the authority within Cisco organization. So in the end, Cisco sponsored this 24-hour Rebel Jam. And so we started at 12 o'clock noon Brussels time. And there was a moderator for Brussels time. And we handed over at 6 p.m. to San Francisco, and then to Boston. Then we handed over to San Francisco, then we handed over to Sydney. So also an idea how fast the program was made, we put up a grid, just a very simple Google spreadsheet with slots of 30 minutes. Who wants to speak? The grid was filled in 48 hours. And the quality was outstanding, and everything that was said there and all the slides were uploaded in 24 hours thanks to Cisco sponsoring and a company that we could hire thanks to them. So we are a bunch of enlightening people. I know there are a couple of people here in the room who are part of Corporate Rebels United, and I thank you very much for being part of that. I know you know who you are. And I think we are all enlightening people. So I took a couple of people that are in the group because these are not extravaganza type of individuals. These are normal people. And what's very interesting in the movement, we seem to have a majority of women in the group. Yeah? So there is Anouk in Brussels. She is running an architect bureau. She's doing open space creations for really big organizations. Carrie is in Portland. They do innovation coaching for more or less mature innovation teams. Nadia is in Hamburg. Nadia stepped up and said, Peter, when are we going to do something here? Wow, I'm called, pinged Nadia, and she said, I'm going to help you with your project management and the administration of this. Mukesh in Bangalore, he stepped up and he says, I want to reinvent sales. MJ in San Francisco, an absolute big thinker about orbiting brands, so it's around branding. And Kurt in Washington, he's working for a governmental institution. He wants to rethink how we experiment and fail in big organizations. And there are even companies who joined our whole team. This is the Alevo team in Romania. It's a software company in financial services. Look at the joy of those people when they were part of the Rebel Jam. So what is our plan for 2014? The main title is People Taking Agency. So we put the target 2,000 people. We want to incentivize people to form corporate triads, so triangles. So if I would team up, if Céline would be in my company and Diane would be in my company, So we are a triad, we are like-minded people, and you reach out to your group and you form your triad. So we start spreading like viruses in the organization, not only horizontally, but also top. We want at the end of the year have 2 practices documented and approved by the community. We'll do 2 Rebel Jams and 1 live event. And so it's about people taking agency. It's about daring to show up in your oneness, in what you are, in your onlyness, what you are unique. And Nilofer has written a lot about this. It's about daring to be great. This phrase resonates with me. I saw Keith Yamashita from SY Partners in San Francisco giving a talk a couple of years ago, a really fascinating talk, titled, "Should You Dare to Be Great?" It's of course a metaphorical or question. Yes, of course we should be dare to be great. And it's holding ourselves accountable, responsible for going to a new form of enlightened leadership, leadingship. We want you to fight mediocrity and applaud critical thinking. Maybe I'm going over the top here, but I think what we are seeing here is a need for a new sort of meta-morality. There's a great book written, Moral Tribes. Some tribes are internal in organizations, and then the question is mainly about how do we balance the me versus us in an organization, and how do we solve those tensions between me and us in organizations. But this author, Joshua Green, talks about how do we solve the cross-organizational boundaries where it is us versus them. So how do we get rid of the tensions between us versus them? I recommend this one. So the point is, you are responsible. You are responsible for what you say personally, and you step forward personally for what you think is right. And you're responsible for what? For all this. You're responsible for yourself, your personal health, your mental health. You're responsible for the others in this room, for your colleagues. You're responsible for your work, for our work in your organization. You're responsible for your network. I'm using work, organization, network. I'm mixing them because I don't want to think you about organization as a incorporate. It can also be a network, it can be pods, it can be whatever it is that glues people together. And I want you to be responsible for the whole, relentlessly. Are there challenges? Yeah. There are quite some challenges. And I wrote a blog post about it some time ago. Let me see if I can find it back. Just that I don't forget the most important ones. One of the challenges is, whether we like it or not, it's the reality, is that you will face corporate antibodies, organizational antibodies that are going to try to make your life miserable. Keep on fighting. The challenge is also to move beyond the myths of manifestos and to become doable, actionable. The challenge is to act like a swarm that infects the organization. The challenge is to activate people into doing things, to create, I call it a duocracy. The challenge is to optimize the swarm for speed, trust, and scalability between ID and action. And some other things which are more soft, but which I consider as very important. The challenge is to be respectful. The challenge is to remain kind. I believe in our organizations, kindness is the new black. The challenge is to keep on standing for your true self every day again. And last but not least, the challenge is to make everything that we so strongly believe it economically relevant. If not, we will not get the attention of the people who can help us change all this. I know Gandhi said this, and so at this moment I'm in the between ignore and laugh phase of the reactions. But if you think we have something valuable, then I invite you to join Corporate Rebels. You go just to the site and you click the button join. We are present at several social media. So there is a website, there is a Scoop.it, there is a Facebook, there is a Google Plus community, there's a LinkedIn group. And I also try to share the stuff I read, so I have a Goodreads, and there you can follow the different books that I read and with some recommendations to it. And I think that's what I had to say. Let's talk after this session. Thank you very much.
Are there any questions?
Okay.
Well, I have some questions. Sure. So, just go over there. Where are, well, certainly there is a individual motivation to become a corporate rebel, but how can corporates make use of this? Maybe also ignite people to become corporate rebel, to enforce also the transformation process.
Yeah. I think it has been mentioned by several other people during this conference. It's to start with doing small things. So what I'm doing here, obviously this is as public as you can get with a movement like this. So of course the company knows about this. It's not a company initiative, let's be clear. So at best I'm tolerated in doing this. I don't get support for this. But what I see when we do things like the Rebel Jam, which I consider as a small thing, which is quite easy to do, suddenly corporate comes to me and says, how have you done this? Because we have a whole machinery of people here just to get a blog post online, and you do a 24 Rebel Jam with 400 participants. How do you do this? And how much had it cost? I will tell you how much it costed. It costed $5,000. And we had a company that was specialized in doing more complex Cisco WebExes. They had 6 people that they put available for us around the clock, and that was $5,000. And those people did everything of contacting the speakers, getting their slide decks, doing the testing 10 minutes before they went on board. At that $5,000. I mean, our companies are so crazy in the amounts that they throw away. I mean, before this, I was with Microsoft, and before that, I ran my own company. So I run my company on a shoestring, because that's how I was raised. So I was driving a Toyota Corolla. I don't know for those, yes, we are in Europe, you know what a Toyota Corolla is. And so somewhere around the year 2000, we decided, I still have regrets that we did it, but we decided to get extra capital and bring in other partners in, and we brought people in that were from IBM, A.T. Kearney, and Accenture. And so the first argument that I had with those people was, they said, I want a BMW. And I said, you will not get a BMW. Yeah. And so we went on with the company. Then I was at Microsoft, and the first day that I entered at Microsoft, I was amazed what a machinery it was and how much money was going through the mills. And at that time, we were talking about, it was called at the time Business Investment Fund, which is a sort of sponsoring of consultancy. And we were discussing amongst ourselves, shall we give to this customer between 5,000 or 15,000 or 20,000 euro in sponsoring? For me, that was a lot of money. And then I came in my current environment, and the sort of basic unit of calculation is 1 man year. Yeah? So here we do something with rebels, like the Rebel Jam, for 5,000 euro or dollars, whatever. And then suddenly, in a big organization, it has to cost at least 1 man year to do things. So by doing this sort of small actions, you really shake up the organization. I have now, of course, visibility at the CEO level. And also when I told him about my sabbatical, he said, I'm trying to be respectful and polite, and I really seriously mean it. Huh? So I went to see him 1 week before my last day in the office, saying, I just want to have the politeness to say hi, bye-bye, I'm gone now for a couple of months. And just reaching out that way, he said, let's have a chat. And we had a chat of an hour and a half, and I discovered that he himself had done a sabbatical in previous career. And he says, call me back, or I call you back in 4 months' time. So we are now about 4 months. And so last week he called me back to have a chat on what I really wanted to do in life and how that could fit into the organization. So another example is, and I'm using it to pitch another anecdote. Well, it's not an anecdote, it's really something deeply painful in organizations. I used to have a manager who said to me, Peter, I love all your ideas, but can you tell me the story in 140 characters and at the same time give me the ROI? Because you know, Pete, I'm a pragmatic person, I'm a 2 feet on the ground person. That's the problem. That sort of pragmatism is, in my opinion, a shield for depth and a shield for human intimacy. It's hiding away in the hierarchy tower with your shield of I'm pragmatic and just tell me the story in 1 minute, and I'm not interested in your deeper thinking or your deeper value system, etc., etc. So with that person, I invited him for a lunch and invited him to tell me about his childhood. And he told me he was raised, I'm trying to be as anonymous as possible, he was raised in a southern European country, and they had a lot of poverty, which was driving a lot of his cost consciousness in the organization. So that's an eye-opener for me. So I'm connecting a human connection now with that person. And a couple of weeks later, I had to defend in front of him and part of the executive committee the program for one of our events. And you could feel, people feel this. You come into the meeting room and you feel there is tension. I was tense because I knew the guy was flip-flop, it can be, yeah, no. Yeah. And he was tension because he was in between meetings. And so I just had read the book from Meng from Google, Search Inside Yourself. And just that morning, I had seen a video shot from one of his presentations. And in the presentation, Meng says there is a practice, a 10-second practice for every day that you can use. So only 10 seconds of your day. Yeah, I think you can do that. Where you look to another person, not even in the eyes, but you think, I want you to be happy. And that's the openness by which I come to you. So I did that with this executive at the start of the tension meeting, and I said, Jim, I want you to be happy. And at first he felt very uncomfortable with this, but the meeting completely, the ice was broken, there was suddenly a very positive flow, and the whole project was approved like this. So by doing this, stepping for your true self and your true values with respect, with kindness, with opening yourself, there is another way to say this. If you look at many organizations, they are, so what it should be is open mind, open heart, open will. And this is not me inventing, this is Otto Scharmer writing this. Theory U, open mind, open heart, open will. And what we see in a lot of organizations is that the culture has become sour, and the opposite of open mind is it's being judgmental. It's being highly judgmental. And the opposite of open heart is cynical. Cynicism is a nut in the heart. And the opposite of open will is control freak. So you see a lot of judgmental, cynical type of control freak behaviors in organization, and it's that we have to change. We have to create behavior change at scale in our organizations, and I don't believe anymore in big programs, change programs, that are driven top-down and push down the organization. I think at least it has to be a combination with groundswell movement, where from this, I think, true, authentic energy as a mesh of like-minded people, we bring it up to the organization and we hold ourselves as a power in the organization.
Thank you very much, Peter van der Auwera.